My wife left to test love with another man, so I let her, but made sure she never forgot it. My name's Alex Turner, 34, and I used to believe marriage was a finish line you only crossed once. I met Emily when we were both 26, a whirlwind. Laughter, pizza on the floor, lady night plans about kids and travel. 8 years later, the laughter had cracks in it. Work stress, long hours, silence during dinners that used to last for hours. I told myself it was just a phase. All couples cycle between love and routine. Then came the night she said she'd met someone, a man from her firm named Jason. Nothing happened, she said, but I need to know what I really want. My chest felt hollow. I thought we both knew. She shook her head. I think I used to. That's when she proposed the trial. 30 days apart. She'd go travel with him, yes, with him a creative sabbatical. And after 30 days, she'd decide who she wanted. I think the worst part was that she looked so calm while saying it. Like choosing between two people was as simple as choosing between two vacations. She left on a Tuesday morning. No fight, no drama, just a kiss on the cheek and, please don't hate me. For 2 days, I stared at the door, waiting for my brain to start feeling something besides numb. Then, on day 3, I saw what she'd really taken with her, not just clothes, but confidence that I'd still be there when she was done deciding. I decided I wouldn't be. I started waking up early for no reason, just to fill time. I fixed the leaking roof, painted the fence, deleted photos that felt like open wounds. Every click of the delete button sounded like a heartbeat I finally owned again. Friends called, most didn't know what to say. Some said, she'll come back and you'll work it out. But a few said the words I needed, use this month for you. So I did. I went back to the gym for the first time since our honeymoon. Spent weekends with my brother and his kids, helped neighbors repair their porch. No big changes, just little choices that didn't include waiting. Day 10, Emily texted a photo of a mountain view with the caption, "This place is beautiful, you'd love it." No apology, no explanation, just casual cruelty. I typed 10 different replies and deleted all of them. Instead, I posted a photo of my own me teaching my niece how to ride a bike, captioned, "Sometimes you find balance by letting go." Her red receipt popped up within a minute. She didn't reply. By week 3, our home stopped feeling like a museum of shared memories. It felt like mine. I painted the bedroom walls a color she hated, deep green. I boxed up her perfume. I started sleeping well again. Nathan, my neighbor and best friend, asked, "You gonna take her back if she comes home, sorry?" I told him the truth. "I'm not waiting for sorry. I'm living like it's already too late." He grinned. That's a Newman energy right there. Day 30 arrived quietly. No message, no knock on the door. By noon, I knew what she'd chosen, or maybe I just stopped caring. So I decided to make my own choice. I packed her things into 2 boxes, one labeled memories, the other nothing left. Outside, a cool breeze cut through the yard as I loaded them into my truck. I drove to her sister's place and left both boxes on the porch with a note that read, "No need to choose. I already did." Because when Emily finally came back 2 days later, she found a house that no longer waited for her. And what I did then is something she will never forget. The house smelled like fresh paint when she walked back in. I heard her before I saw her, the slow drag of a suitcase across the porch, then the hesitation at the door when the key didn't fit anymore. I'd changed the locks the week before. "Alex?" Her voice floated through the crack of the door like a memory trying to get back in. I opened it just long enough for her to see me. She looked the same tan from wherever she'd been, hair lightened by the sun, confidence dimmed by the shock on her face. "Hey," I said simply. She blinked. "Hey? That's it?" I stepped aside. "Your things are gone. I left them at Lisa's." She frowned. "Lisa called. She said you left boxes labeled memories and nothing left. What is that?" "I guess it's everything we built, half worth remembering, half I'm done carrying." She crossed her arms, trying to find the old power in her posture. "Alex, we agreed. I'd take a month. I'd come back. We'd talk." "You took a month," I said quietly. "I took back my life." She pushed past me and stood in the living room staring at the new color on the walls, the rearranged pictures, the empty shelf where her books used to be. "This doesn't even look like our home." "It isn't," I said. "It's mine now." Her eyes shimmered angry or tearful, I couldn't tell. "You're just going to throw away 8 years?" I smiled sadly. "You already did. I just stopped pretending to hold the pieces together." She took a slow breath. "So that's it? I met someone, I made a mistake, and now you get to act like the hero?" I shook my head. "I'm not the hero, Emily. I'm just the one who learned the lesson." "What lesson?" "That love doesn't need audience votes." She dropped her purse on the couch and sank down. "I thought you'd fight for me." "That's exactly why I didn't." Her eyes snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I finally realized if you ever truly loved me, I wouldn't have needed to compete for you." For a moment, silence filled the space between us, thick and heavy as dust on an old shelf. "I didn't sleep with him," she blurted suddenly. "Not once. But I thought about it, and that's bad enough. I wanted to see if happiness could feel easier." I whispered, "And?" She looked down. It didn't. I sat across from her, elbows on my knees. I spent 30 days waiting to hate you, I said. Instead, I forgave you enough to move on. Move on? Already? Her voice cracked. Already, I said. Because while you were deciding if I was enough, I learned I already was. She wiped her face quickly. Is there someone else? I smiled faintly. No, just me. Turns out he's good company. The next few minutes felt like watching two timelines finally diverge. She tried laughter first, that movie star smile she used to win arguments. Then came anger. You'll regret this, Alex. I was honest with you. Honest people don't audition new lovers, I said. She grabbed her purse and stood. You know what? Fine. Be the victim. Tell your friends how brave you were. I exhaled slowly. There's no villain or victim here, Emily. Just someone who left and someone who finally opened the door the other way. She paused at the door. Do you still love me? Of course, I said. But sometimes love retires before the marriage does. The door clicked shut behind her, not slammed, just shut. I stood there long enough to hear her car fade down the street. Then I sat on the floor and laughed, loud and wild, like freedom finally remembered my address. That night, I wrote one line on a scrap of paper and taped it to the fridge. If she ever calls again, answer with gratitude, because pain finally paid rent. A week later, a letter arrived. She didn't text this time, handwriting instead of excuses. Alex, you were right to let go. It took me the whole drive to realize the life I wanted had already been here. I just didn't know how to stay. I won't ask to come back, but I will always thank you for not chasing me when I ran. I didn't cry. I just folded the letter and placed it in the memories box I'd kept for myself. Then I walked outside and watched the sunset alone, the same sky we'd once dreamed under, but now it felt like mine again. A few months passed. Friends started inviting me places, concerts, hikes, things I used to say no to. Life had stopped being survival. It started sounding like color again. One evening, as I was closing the garage, my neighbor called out, "Hey Turner, you look 10 years younger." Divorce does that. I joked. He laughed. Freedom fits you, man. He was right. Months later, Emily texted one last time. Un simple message. I hope you're happy. I replied. I hope you are too. Thank you for teaching me that waiting isn't love, it's fear wearing perfume. Then I deleted her number for good. The sky outside was turning gold as the streetlights blinked on. I poured a drink, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to no one. I didn't lose her. I just finally found me. Because what came next wasn't about revenge or rebound. It was about how starting over looks when you build it for yourself, not around someone else. 3 months after she left, something strange happened. The world around me stopped feeling temporary. The walls of the house stopped echoing. Silence turned into something softer, like background music instead of emptiness. Most people think heartbreak is a war you win once. It's not. It's hundreds of small victories, getting through mornings without checking your phone, grocery shopping without buying their favorite snacks, sleeping without the sound of panic breathing next to you. I was finally collecting those victories. One Saturday morning, I went hiking with my brother Ryan. He met me halfway up the trail, grinning. Man, I kept expecting you to cancel. You used to cancel everything. Yeah, well, I said, my schedule opened up. He laughed. So, how's single life? It's quiet. Quiet, good, or quiet, sad? I thought about it, then said. Both, which probably means it's healthy. Ryan nodded. You think she'll ever come back? I shrugged. Honestly, I hope not. Not because I hate her, but because I finally like myself. He smiled. That's deep, bro. You writing captions now? I laughed. Maybe I am. Weeks turned into habits, and habits turned into peace. I signed up for a cooking class, half to learn, half to remind myself new skills can fill old gaps. First night there, someone accidentally spilled sauce on my shirt. She gasped, mortified. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Her name was Laura, a teacher, warm smile, a little awkward, nothing dramatic. And for the first time, I didn't feel like comparing her to Emily. We talked about everything but relationships, music, travel, stupid internet memes. When the class ended, she said, "You're surprisingly calm for a divorced guy." I smiled. I practiced. She laughed. You should be teaching us. We exchanged numbers, no spark fireworks, just curiosity and peace. That was enough. That same night, I got a letter in the mail. Return address. None. The handwriting I recognized instantly. Emily. I considered not opening it. But the envelope kept staring at me across the counter, like it held either apology or poison. I finally opened it. Alex. I read your text over and over. You're right, waiting isn't love. I spent months convincing myself that I was choosing freedom, but the truth is I just didn't know how to stay still with something good. I wanted adventure because I didn't know how to handle peace. You deserved better than my confusion. If it means anything, I learned that the thing people chase for excitement doesn't last. It burns out faster than guilt. I don't expect an answer. Just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I stood there, letter trembling in my hands. It didn't make me angry. It made me human again. Nathan once told me that closure doesn't knock, it just stops echoing. That night, for me, it finally stopped. 2 months later, Laura and I were sitting in a coffee shop after class. She saw the small scar on my wrist I'd forgotten about. "What happened here?" she asked. I smiled. "It's my reminder." "Of what?" "That even perfect plans leave marks." She tilted her head. "You still believe in love?" "Sure," I said. "Just not the kind that asks me to wait while it decides." She smiled. "Good, because that kind doesn't deserve you anyway." And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't comparing anymore. The ghost of my marriage had stopped sitting at the table with me. One evening, I ran into Emily's sister Lisa at the grocery store. She spotted me by the cereal aisle. "Alex, you look alive again." "I was dead?" I joked. She smiled sadly. "Emily moved away, said she's starting over. She wanted me to tell you thanks for not hating her." "I never did," I said. "I just finally loved myself more." Lisa nodded. "You know, she said your silence taught her more than any fight could have." That line hit me in the chest. I didn't answer, just smiled. Sometimes the lesson people need is exactly the quiet you leave behind. Later that night at home, I found the old photo album we'd made early in our marriage. I flipped through it slowly, vacations, birthdays, the dog we once had. Then I stopped on one picture, both of us covered in paint, laughing while renovating the house. There was no resentment in the image, just two people trying. I slipped that single picture back into the memories box and burned the rest in the fireplace. The paper curled, turned orange, then silver ash. I whispered to those ashes, "Thank you for failing loud enough to teach me peace." A week later, Laura and I went hiking again. Halfway up the mountain, she stopped to catch her breath. "You always walk this fast?" "Only when I'm running from my past," I said with a grin. She laughed, pretending to push me. "Guess I'll help slow you down." We stood at the top watching the sun melt into golden clouds. She said quietly, "You ever think about what you'd say if she was here right now?" I thought about it for a moment and answered, "I'd tell her thanks, because without her leaving, I'd never have stayed long enough to meet myself." Laura smiled. "That's the healthiest thing I've heard in years." "Yeah?" I said. Freedom aged well on me. That evening, I added one final label to a brand new box. New beginnings. Inside, I placed the hiking photo, my class recipe book, and a note that said, "You didn't have to win, you just had to heal." Because new stories don't always start when someone arrives, sometimes they start the day you stop waiting. A full year had passed since Emily left, but it felt like a lifetime had been lived in that space. Where she had once built storms, quiet now lived, patient and strong. Mornings had their rhythm. Coffee brewing, NPR humming from the old kitchen radio, and the small sound of keys tapping as I worked from home. Sometimes Laura would text something simple like, "Don't forget to eat lunch," and it would make me smile. That's what healthy looked like, small, steady reminders instead of emotional hurricanes. One Friday afternoon, I was prepping the grill when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. For half a heartbeat, my stomach twisted the old reflex. I answered. "Alex?" The voice was older, not worn, just quieter. "Emily?" She chuckled softly. "You recognized me." I could pick that tone out of a crowd. "What's going on?" "I'm not calling to reopen anything," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to know I got divorced." The irony made me laugh, then immediately feel guilty for laughing. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "It's okay," she replied. "He was never built for honesty." There was a pause. Then she said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For not turning into him." For a long moment, we just breathed into the line. She continued quietly, "Do you ever wonder how we ended up there? Love turning into something we had to measure?" I said, "Yeah, but it wasn't sudden. It was one tiny compromise at a time." She sighed. "You always see things too clearly once they're gone." "That's called accountability," I offered gently. She actually laughed. "Still teaching, huh?" "Still learning," I said. "Then I'm glad you found someone good." "Even if I hadn't," I said, "I found someone better myself." A tiny sniffle followed. "Goodbye, Alex," she murmured. "Goodbye, Emily." When the call ended, it didn't sting. It just sounded finished. That evening, Lara noticed my faraway stare at the dinner table. "Hey," she said softly, "ghost calling again?" I nodded. She called to say thank you. "That's progress," Lara replied. "Does that happen closure after closure?" "Apparently," I said. "It's like grief finding its manners." She smiled, reached across the table, and took my hand. "Then don't miss the part where peace finally sits down to eat too." We laughed. The air between us felt light, alive. 2 weeks later, my brother Ryan convinced me to join him on a small road trip, a father-son kind of camping weekend. When we reached the lake, he looked at me and said, "You're different. You don't flinch anymore when people talk about her." "I don't chase ghosts," I told him. "You think she's changed?" "I hope she has, but that's not my story anymore." He nodded. "That's freedom. You should write that down." I grinned. "Already did. In living form." At the lake that night, the stars mirrored against the water like old regrets, finally letting go of their reflections. Ryan mumbled, "You ever think about marriage again?" "Yeah," I said quietly. But not urgently. I think real love takes its time showing up. I rushed once, I won't again. He nudged me. That teacher girl Laura, you too serious? I smiled. Define serious. You built her a shelf last week, man. That's like putting a ring on it. We both burst out laughing. For a long while, we just listened to the water brush the rocks. Then I said, if I ever do marry again, it'll be for peace, not rescue. Ryan raised his beer can. To peace. I clinked mine, to not being an option someone chooses between. Back in town, life settled into something steady. Laura and I started a small photography hobby together, taking pictures of random strangers who let us capture moments. We called it Love Looks Ordinary. Each picture told a story that didn't need filters. An old couple eating ice cream, a dog walker smiling upward, a single dad holding his daughter's hand. One weekend, we got featured in a local blog. They asked about the name. I said, because ordinary love doesn't leave for 30 days to make up its mind. The writer laughed but typed it word for word. The post went viral locally. Divorced guy redefines what love looks like. Emily even liked it from her public account. No message, no comment, just the faint echo of acknowledgement through a heart icon. And strangely, I was grateful. That winter, Laura and I decorated a tree together. While hanging the lights, she asked, do you ever wish things had gone differently back then? I thought for a moment. No, I said. If she hadn't left, I'd still think loyalty meant waiting instead of growing. Laura touched my cheek gently. You talk about her with peace. That's rare. I talk about her with distance, I corrected softly. Peace just lives in the space between. She smiled, then let the space stay. On Christmas Eve, my brother came by with his family. We were watching the kids decorate cookies when my niece asked me, Uncle Alex, what does love mean? Everyone laughed. Kids pick the wildest questions. But I answered anyway. Love means you don't have to be afraid that someone's packing a suitcase while saying they care. Ryan looked at me, eyes wide, then grinned. You've been rehearsing that. Maybe, I said. Some lines are worth keeping polished. Later that night, alone under the tree lights, I wrote myself another note and taped it beside the first one. You survived being someone's indecision. That's worth celebrating every day you wake up sure of yourself. Then I poured a glass, sat back, and whispered into the quiet house, Merry Christmas, me, you finally made it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't moving on, it's moving peaceful. Spring came quietly that year, no big endings, no new drama, just green leaves where old ones fell. For the first time since my wedding ring had come off, life didn't feel like a reboot. It simply felt normal. Laura and I had rhythm now. She left sticky notes on the fridge, reminders like, don't forget to breathe, or dinner at 6, no overthinking allowed. I'd reply with doodles of stick figures holding coffee mugs. Ordinary had become my favorite kind of adventure. One Saturday, while sorting mail, a thick envelope caught my eye. No return label. But inside, a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to the marriage of Emily Sanders, and blank space printed, then handwritten, no one. A celebration of forgiveness. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I kept reading. I'm hosting a small dinner with a few close friends and family. No groom, no ceremony, just closure. You once taught me that endings can be gifts, come if you want. Eh? Laura read it over my shoulder. That's different. I nodded. Yeah, it's the most her thing ever. Are you going? She asked. I think so. Maybe it's time to meet the past without flinching. The dinner was at a lakeside restaurant, the same spot Emily and I had celebrated our 5th anniversary. Poetic, really. When I arrived, there were maybe 10 people, her family, a few mutual friends. And Emily, standing by the water in a simple blue dress, looking more human than nostalgic. She smiled as I approached. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think you'd find symbolism in an empty wedding invite, I replied lightly. She laughed soft, unguarded. That's why I wanted you here. I'm done writing chapters where people are either villains or victims. We sat down across from each other, the lake shimmering between us. When coffee arrived, she said, You look good, happier. I am. She must be kind, she added. She is. Emily nodded. Good. Kind people handle broken ones better than saints. For a while, we just watched the water. Finally, she said, You were right, that waiting isn't love. I spent years waiting for anyone to tell me I was worth certainty. I never realized that had to start from me. That's a hard lesson, I said. The hardest, she whispered. I learned it the same way you found yours the hard way. We both laughed softly at the irony. After dinner, we stood on the dock. The same moon reflected across the same lake, but everything felt rewritten. I'm happy for you, I said honestly. Emily turned to me. And I'm grateful for you. She reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. Last closure, don't open it now. She smiled one last time, then walked away. No grand speeches, no tears, just peace saying goodbye like an old friend. Driving home, the envelope sat on the passenger seat next to me. When I finally opened it, there was a single sentence written inside. Love is when you stop asking someone else to make it easy. I folded it and smiled. For the first time in years, her words didn't hurt, they healed. Weeks later, life slipped back into its calm rhythm. One evening, Lara and I were cleaning the porch when she said, "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" I hesitated. Not about her, about how right it feels to have nothing left to prove. She smiled. "Then you're ready for what's next." I raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" She pulled a small box from her pocket, nervous grin flashing. Inside a simple silver band. "Wait, you're asking me?" I said, laughing as shock hit me. She nodded. "Told you I like rewriting stories." For a second, I just stared at the ring and laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how perfectly full circle it was. The month that once broke me had become the year that rebuilt me. I said yes. Our ceremony was small, 20 people, no drama, all peace. Ryan gave the speech, to my brother, who learned love the expensive way through therapy and self-respect. Everyone laughed. Lara squeezed my hand under the table. When the music played, I caught glimpses of our friends dancing, laughing, free. No ghosts in the room. For once, every memory coexisted without pain. During the last song, Lara whispered, "Do you regret any of it?" I shook my head. Regret's too heavy for someone who learned to travel light. She smiled. "Then let's keep walking." A year later, on our first anniversary, I found an envelope in the mail, no name, no return address. Inside was a photo of that dinner by the lake, me and Emily laughing mid-conversation. On the back, she'd written, "Congratulations, you found the version of love I never could." I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it with the wedding invitation she once sent to herself, my own private archive of how people change. Because some stories don't end, they evolve. That evening, I stood on our porch, Lara's head resting on my shoulder. The sky was the same blue Emily once wore, but now it meant something else. I whispered, "If the world ever asks if we can really move on from the people who hurt us." Lara looked up. "What will you say?" "I'll say yes if we learn to love ourselves enough to stop waiting for apology tours." She smiled. "That sounds like one of your quotes again." "Maybe," I said, "but this one comes with proof. Because forgiving her didn't bring her back, it brought me forward. And forward is the only direction I plan to keep traveling." If you listen this far, you understand that healing isn't about revenge, it's about respecting yourself enough to walk away. Subscribe now for more stories about rebuilding after being broken. And remember, sometimes closure is just peace showing up in a different person.